Angle on America time on this Wednesday. COVID-19 cases and deaths continue to skyrocket in the U.S. The presidential race, of course, now in full swing. We're less than 3 months until the vote. But how exactly will the virus impact that election in November and, frankly, Donald Trump's chances of holding on to office? How much of it will be decided by the virus? Let's bring in our Angle on America panelists that we love so dearly, Corey Crowley and Steve Farnsworth, back with us on this Wednesday. Corey, let me start with you on this one here. We're hearing the president say that, the cases are going down in the United States. Things are under control. There was also this news conference recently in which, as he was talking about the coronavirus, he talked about car sales being up in your country. Your read on how this is playing out for a president trying to get reelected?
Well, look, I mean, you got to pull out all the stops, right? And if you can't say that it's the economy doing great anymore, then you got to look for some silver lining. And I suppose car sales must be one of them. But I think, Todd, really what we should start looking for here is the next big issue that's going to face us in the United States when it comes to coronavirus, and that's the return to school in just a few weeks. We already see states handling it in a completely different way from state to state, much like they handled the initial response. I think that means that we're going to see cases spike in some spots and go down in others. If that is seen as a very red and blue kind of divide like the initial responses were, then I think it bodes very poorly for the president. And I know that governors are grappling with, folks who are working from home and don't have daycare and need their kids to go back to school. But by the same token, the first teacher death, the first student to contract this is going to be news that I think is almost insurmountable for any leader to try to overcome.
You think about it, Steve, as well, that this is unlike anything Donald Trump has ever faced before. I mean, you cannot attack the virus on Twitter. Yeah, you can't go after the virus like you would a political enemy and try to undermine, the way the American people see that person, such as Joe Biden. I mean, this is something that he is trying to deal with in real time here. How would you characterize his response?
Well, this is the problem that the president is facing right now. He simply cannot spin his way out of 150,000 deaths as a result of a failed federal response. That is the bottom line here. And certainly the best thing that the president can hope for is an economic recovery of some fashion. And that's why he looks for those opportunities to point to things like the rise in the stock market or the improved numbers for automobile sales, to look to that. But that's the big challenge here, because ultimately a incumbent president running for re-election has to deal with the years that he has been in office and whether that's worked or not. And when America remains on this lockdown and faces continuing threats with respect to the start of the school year, you can see why the numbers at the moment do not favor the president.
I wonder, Corey, whether you think there might be some kind of October surprise, and I appreciate it's only early August, so we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But, there are concerns that pressure is being brought to bear on pharmaceutical companies to develop a vaccine, and quickly, possibly for political means. Do you think that we might see that there will be a big announcement in October when the president needs a boost in the polls that, hey, guess what? We've got a vaccine?
Even if there were, I don't see it being a big shot in the arm to this campaign or to this election like some might expect it is. The honest truth is, even if a vaccine were to be announced in October, we wouldn't have any results. Probably we wouldn't even have it widespread available enough to be used for anyone who wasn't absolutely high risk. My thought right now is that when the vaccine becomes available, whenever that is, it's going to go to nursing homes first. It's going to go to frontline medical workers, people who are exposed to this and that we know are extremely high risk for getting and dying from the coronavirus. And so I just don't think it's going to be widespread enough. It's not like there are going to be 257 million doses of this that they can just hand out overnight and then it's all gone.
Steve, a vaccine victory? What do you think?
Well, certainly this would be the silver bullet that the Trump administration is hoping for. You've seen them from the start of this crisis trying to find the equivalent of a miracle cure in the various efforts that they have tried to find anti-malarial drugs and other things that can be useful. So far, the evidence hasn't backed that up. But that being said, the results so far from some of these tests by various pharmaceutical companies do suggest that something may be coming down the pike. And I imagine the president will do whatever he can to take credit for this as soon as he can, especially before the election. But as Corey said, the likelihood that this is going to be available to the public between now and November is really quite slim. And the other thing to remember, too, is that in America, a lot of people vote early. And so as early as mid-September, people will start casting ballots in this election. And that's going to be a significant problem for the October surprise. October surprises were a lot more effective a generation ago when a much greater percentage of the population voted on or the day around the election day.
Okay, last one for the three of us. Joe Biden expected to announce his vice presidential pick very soon, could even be this week, certainly before the Democratic convention. Corey, your read here. We're going to show the four women who continue to be talked about. Kamala Harris of California, Val Demings of Florida. Karen Bass is a new one that's being talked about from California, and Susan Rice, former UN ambassador as well. Your read, who would you put your chips on?
Well, I think Bass and Harris are the front runners. Harris, for the logical reason that she's got the highest name ID. Senators are just better known than members of the House. And so that's just a simple reality there. I do think Bass is in the top two, top three of contenders because she's unique. She's a new and fresh face to the scene. She's not as polarizing because she's not as well known. So you can define her a lot better. And I think that she offers some interest if you were to put her up in a debate next to Mike Pence. They're just extremely different in energy levels, obviously in their sex and skin color and all that too. But I think she just represents the fresh face of the future of the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden obviously does not. So that's a balance he needs to strike.
Okay, last word goes to you, Steve. What do you think, including sort of this surprise from California about Karen Bass?
Well, I do think that if it's going to be someone from California, it's more likely to be Kamala Harris. My second choice of the four that you mentioned would probably be Val Demings, who had a law enforcement background. He would be a tough target for Republicans to hit. I think one of the challenges that the Trump campaign has been trying to create the 2016 Hillary Clinton attack in a way that sticks on Joe Biden, and that hasn't actually worked so far. And I think that one of the things that the Trump administration is hoping for is somebody who is more combative, who has some record of controversy that can be of use to them with attack ads. And the Biden campaign might very well stay away from more controversial choices like Susan Rice and Congressman Bass.
There we go. Lots of buzz. Let's show the four women once again before we go. In all likelihood, it will be one of these four, and the decision from the Biden campaign expected really any day now, as people are waiting to find out the results of the so-called Veep stakes. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time for us here in Canada today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd.
Corey Crowley, Steve Farnsworth.